What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Well, guys, the Indianapolis Colts traveled to Berlin at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time in the morning. They play the Atlanta Falcons. I guess it's technically a home game for the Indianapolis Colts. But, of course, we have to bring in our good friend Kevin Knight. Kevin, man, it's been a little bit. I know we had you on, I believe, 2023. So it's been a little bit, but guys, Kevin covers the Falcons for the Falcoholic and obviously does some stuff as well with the Believe Network. Kevin, how you feeling, man, about the Falcons this year? How you feeling overall?
Well, overall, things are, as good as they can be in this tumultuous time we live in. But other than that, the Falcons aren't really helping, unfortunately. But, I'm good personally. Thank you for asking. But yeah, the Falcons, we have a different coaching staff than the last time we met. The GM is the same. We have a different quarterback. And we're having the same conversation probably that we were having then, where it's like, wow, we're probably going to fire this coach and be looking for another coach by the time the show is over. But it's been a real disappointing season for Falcons fans I don't think they were anywhere expecting to be like where the Colts are right now, but certainly expecting at this point to be in the mix in the NFC, and they've all but fallen out of the picture now at 3-5. So rough start to the season in Atlanta.
Well, I'm hopeful that the result doesn't happen like it did in 2023 because the Colts just looked awful in that game. So obviously you would love for that performance to happen again. But,
we'd just be more confused about Atlanta at that point. So, yeah.
Well, that's what makes me nervous is like Pittsburgh, I think, was singing similar tunes last week. And I'm like, look what happened there. So hopefully it doesn't happen from a Colts standpoint. But guys, before we continue on in our conversation, I just want to say this episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Guys, right now the spread for this game is 6.5 points. The Indianapolis Colts over the Atlanta Falcons right now are favorites. Kevin, I know we talked on your show a little bit about that. I feel like that's pretty fair right now with kind of where both teams are right now. Obviously, both coming off very disappointing losses. But how are you feeling just about that spread right now on FanDuel from that standpoint?
Yeah, I think like what I've picked up on, the one consistent thing about this team is that they cover against good teams and they don't against bad teams. Where they were 5.5 point underdogs to the New England Patriots last week, they get within a point and it should have been tied, but they missed the extra point at the end of the game. Yeah. Shout out to Parker Romo. Hopefully he finds success elsewhere. So I mean, at this point, I would expect them to cover here. Whether they win, that's an open question, but they tend to cover against better opponents. So, this is the Colts, I would say, are either the best or the second best team, depending on what you think about the Bills. So maybe the Falcons will deliver their best or second best game of the season. We'll see.
We'll have to see. Well, guys, again, shout out to FanDuel. Be sure to go check them out. But Kevin, man, let's dive into this game. So like I mentioned, both of these teams coming off very disappointing losses where you felt like, man, we should have won, but we kind of beat ourselves at times in those games. So when looking at just the Atlanta Falcons overall, what do you think has, in your opinion, been going well for them this year? What's been the things you're like, okay, if you're the Falcons right now, even though you're 3-5, you can hang your hats on these things right now that you're doing well. And what have been some of the primary issues on why you feel like the Falcons haven't necessarily lived up to some of the expectations coming into this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one big surprise in a positive direction, maybe 2 of the last 3 games notwithstanding, has been the emergence of the defense and Jeff Ulbrich coming over and taking a unit that was just one of the worst in the NFL last year, looked completely outmatched by pretty much every opponent they played under Jimmy Lake. They get him out, they bring in Ulbrich. And there's some concerns, obviously, about that because he's returning to Atlanta, and the last time he was here, things didn't go great. But he has come in, put in a simplified scheme and attacking aggressive defense. And for the first 5-6 weeks of the season, including their game against the Bills, this was one of the best defenses in the NFL, top 5 in most statistics. And they're still the number 1 pass defense, allowing just 158 pass yards per game. And that's a insane turnaround for a defense that was known for the last 5 or 6 years of being the worst pass rush, one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. They've really turned that around, and it's become a strength of the team, the most consistent part of the team, honestly. And the pass rush has not been amazing, but they've taken major steps. They have a real committee approach to generating pressure. Their 2 rookies really came on strong last week when they needed them most. So the defense, I would say, has been a big plus for this team. And I would say, like, it might be controversial, but I've been impressed with what I've seen from Michael Penix. We talked about it on my show. I think the offense as a whole has been very disappointing, mostly because of the scheme. I think Penix has tried his best to kind of overcome that. And the Falcons do have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball that I think could be beneficial for a future coaching staff if things do go badly this year. Bijan Robinson was on a historic pace to start the season in terms of yards per game from scrimmage. That has fallen off, unfortunately. Drake London had his best game of his career last week, 3 touchdowns. And Kyle Pitts is having a bounce back season, finally healthy off an injury that was kind of downplayed a few years ago. Penix trusts him, unlike Kirk Cousins, who just didn't want to throw the ball to Kyle Pitts for some reason. So Pitts has really bounced back in a big way. He looks dangerous. Drake London looks awesome. And Bijan Robinson's Bijan Robinson. But the Falcons have been absolutely ravaged on the offensive line, and that's the other side of the coin there. They've managed to weather it so far, but last week they lost both guards. They're down to their 4th offensive tackle. It looks like their 3rd offensive tackle ain't coming back, considering he suffered a setback during practice. And they just haven't been able to run the ball anymore the last couple weeks. So disappointments would be, the overall scheme and the coaching as a whole. Raheem Morris has really struggled. The team is very sloppy penalty-wise, lots of pre-snap penalties. Early in the year, they had issues getting the play calls in on time for many weeks. And Zach Robinson's scheme has kind of been figured out by NFL defenses, and there doesn't appear to be solutions coming. We hear the unfortunate call of coaches that are doomed to be fired, which is we just need to execute better. And that rarely goes well for coaches when we hear that every week. So we'll see if they can make the necessary changes to get this back on track. But I would say the defense has been the grand surprise. Things look great. And the offense has been what was expected to be the engine of the team has popped a tire. I mean, I guess engines don't pop tires, but I'm losing the analogy there. But the offense has been disappointing is where I was going with that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you mentioned some of the injuries, especially with that offensive line. How do you feel about some of these injuries and some of these guys potentially being available for Sunday? And who are some guys maybe you don't expect to suit up? And who are some guys that are kind of like, well, it's kind of a wild card. Toss it up. Never know.
Yeah, left guard Matthew Bergeron's not going to play as far as I know. He's week to week. Chris Lindstrom, they consider him day to day. He's an Iron Man. He will probably play, would be my guess. We'll obviously see, Friday's practice is going to be important for him. But it sounds like they have some belief in his ability to get back on the field. The Falcons' primary reserve guard, Kyle Hinton, is pretty good. Like, I would say he's a starting caliber guard, and he's paid like it. He's making $3 million as a reserve guard, but he's fine. So if he has to play, nothing's really going to go wrong there. But when they go to their swing offensive lineman in Jovan Gwynn, who actually played well in his 15 snaps at the end of the game for a change, but that's when things could really fall off, when you're replacing your best offensive lineman in Chris Lindstrom, who's a perennial All-Pro, with your 7th offensive lineman on the roster. That's when things can really get off the rails. And the Falcons are already playing their 4th offensive tackle at right tackle. Caleb McGarry got hurt just before the season and is out for the year. Their swing tackle was supposed to be coming back, but like I said, he's all of a sudden not practicing again at the end of his IR activation window, suffered a setback there, so he may not be returning either. So we'll see there, but I think Lindstrom has a shot. Bergeron probably isn't going to play. But in terms of the other guys, I think they're getting back several players on defense in terms of Zach Harrison and Billy Bowman, who are 2 starters for them. And then the other guy to monitor would be Leonard Floyd, who is one of their rotational edge rushers. He ended up leaving the game last weekend and did not return, and he hasn't practiced so far this week. So if he doesn't play, it's going to be a lot more snaps for the rookies, Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., which is not the end of the world, but Floyd is definitely a capable pass rusher, and they like to keep all those guys really fresh, so that'll hurt their rotation if he's not able to go.
Yeah, no doubt. And we know about the injuries too, with guys like Charvarius Ward, who's missed the last couple weeks, will be out in this game, obviously, and everything like that. So injuries are never fun. We'll see what happens there. Now, Kevin, when you look at this Colts team in general, this team has obviously surprised a lot of people this year. What has been your impressions just overall of this Colts offense, right? Because, outside of last week against Pittsburgh, where the Colts were uncharacteristic in pretty much every category, they turned the ball over, they didn't run it very well, they didn't pass it very well, they didn't protect Daniel Jones very well. Like, what has your impressions been of this Colts offense so far? And a unit that a lot of people thought, is this going to be a really bad unit this year? Like, who's going to be quarterback? There were so many questions. What's been your thoughts of the Colts offense here through the first half of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Steelers game was such an outlier. I almost throw it out because what I would have said about this operation in Indianapolis is clean. Like it's a clean offense. It looks smooth. They give the quarterback simple, easy reads. They work hard to get these guys open with their route combinations, with the scheme. The offensive line has been playing great football. So Daniel Jones, they're not asking him to do anything crazy. They're saying, you've got a great arm. You can move. Just go hit these. Let's take advantage and let's do this. And it's kind of the opposite of the Falcons offense, really. I mean, this is kind of what we were hoping we'd see in Atlanta, but I think Steichen's done a great job of making this look really easy for Daniel Jones and giving him clean, simple reads, getting guys open with the formations. This is all the stuff that we saw him do at his previous stop, which was obviously excellent. And then Daniel Jones has been delivering. And then when you have the run game and Jonathan Taylor, who I think Taylor and Bijan are clearly the elite running backs right now. Saquon's having a bit of a down year. He would normally be in that conversation. Fortunately, it looks like Derrick Henry's finally started to slow down a little bit, so he may be not quite in that top echelon anymore. But these are the elite of the elite running backs. McCaffrey's probably back in there this year as well. So these guys are special talents that you should build offenses around. And the Colts, I think, have done a great job of leaning on Taylor as much as they can. And I know we mentioned it previously, but that maybe last week that was part of the problem, was maybe trying to give Taylor a little bit of a break and ended up kind of biting him a little bit when the offense had an uncharacteristically bad day.
Yeah, so flipping it over to Atlanta's defense then, what do you think the Falcons need to do in order to potentially repeat what Pittsburgh was able to do against this Colts offense? Like you said, it's been very clean operation this year. They've been able to rely on their best player. They've been able to have Daniel Jones get the ball to the guys. What do you think the Falcons need to do in order to disrupt that Colts offense again?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is the Falcons have to find ways to stop the run consistently, because I don't think the Colts are going to fear running the ball against Atlanta at all. Nobody really does. The Falcons had better success against it last week against the Patriots. They managed to keep that run game in check for the first time in weeks. But this is a vulnerable run defense. They don't have a real nose tackle. They're mostly undersized, and that's been really good in the pass rushing department where they've been very dangerous, but it's left them kind of vulnerable, especially to teams that run a lot of man gap concepts. And we know that the Colts are willing to do that with Jonathan Taylor. So that could be an opportunity for Indianapolis. So the Falcons have to find a way to kind of overload those. They took steps. They're missing their middle linebacker. The guy they had in there, J.D. Bertrand, to fill in, has been the worst linebacker in the NFL. Last week, they finally started to give someone else snaps there. And it looked a lot better against the Patriots, probably why they played better in that game. But still a lot of work to do there. But I think the best path for the Falcons is to find a way to bottle up Taylor on early downs and then get pressure, because we saw that was the Steelers' path. The Falcons have edge rushers and interior guys they trust to get pressure. They're going to run a lot of blitzes. They blitzed Drake May on 62% of his dropbacks last week. They did the same thing against Josh Allen. It was the highest blitz rate Allen had seen since his rookie season. The Falcons will blitz anyone at any time for any reason. That's their whole ethos, and they will do it. And they do it better than pretty much anyone else. And part of that, I think, is Jalen Walker, who has some of the best movement skills in terms of his lateral mobility and ability to kind of stand up and redirect himself of any edge rusher I've seen. He is undersized, obviously, but very smart, can change direction on a dime. And they love to play games with him, run him on stunts and loops and all kinds of stuff. He's been very dangerous. He had 2 sacks last week. So he's going to be a core part of their game plan. And I think he'll be critical in this game as well against a quarterback in Daniel Jones that we know he can scramble and get out of the pocket if you give him a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm kind of curious because we know how good the Atlanta Falcons secondary has been this year. A.J. Terrell, obviously, we know so many other guys in that secondary that you can point to. But the Indianapolis Colts offense as well has been able to pass the football, and they do that and Daniel Jones has done a great job this year. They spread the ball around to a lot of different guys. They have Michael Pittman, obviously, he's their number one. Alec Pierce, who's one of the best deep threats in the NFL. They both those guys coming off 100-yard games against the Steelers. You have Josh Downs in the slot, who I think is one of the best slot receivers. And then you throw in the Tyler Warren factor as well, in the middle. So it kind of seems like it's a strength on strength sort of situation here. So what do you think is that matchup's going to look like? Because it seems like this could be one where it's, two teams that do really good and have really good players on both sides of the ball. Like, what do you think it's going to come down to? What's the biggest matchup here that you think will dictate which team wins this battle in terms of the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, I assume the Falcons will have A.J. Terrell on Michael Pittman. He's their guy that they play against size. Mike Hughes has been a very, very solid corner too. And obviously Alec Pierce is a tough matchup. But they'll probably try to give him safety help over the top on the deep threat there. We'll see who's playing the slot. D. Alford has filled in really well for rookie Billy Bowman. Bowman's a much better run defender, but Alford is more experienced. So we've seen Bowman give up some plays in coverage, but he's very aggressive and he's a ball hawk. So he's always dangerous to target no matter who's in there. They've been playing well in the slot, but the concern for the Falcons is Tyler Warren, because when they had Divine Diablo, who was their starting middle linebacker in there, he was elite in coverage. He was able to track down running backs and tight ends and everybody. He was kind of, we'll play him on anybody and everybody and he'll be fine. Without him, they don't have a tight end matchup person anymore. So unless they're willing to move a safety down, I think that is a matchup that the Patriots just basically, it was easy money every time they went to the tight end. And that's probably what's going to happen here. The Falcons just don't have an answer without Divine Diablo. So I wonder if they do adjust and have Jesse Bates play man coverage against the tight end or something like that. Rookie safety Xavier Watts has become sort of their de facto deep safety and done a great job back there. But Bates has kind of been moved around and hasn't looked super comfortable. He's trying to adjust to a more aggressive box safety role, which I think could fit him really well, but it's not something he's done much in his career. So last week got his first pick. So I wonder if they're going to start trying to use him more as a matchup option, because they don't really have anyone at linebacker to match up with Warren, who has been one of the best offensive players of this rookie class so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting because I feel like there's similar problems with the Falcons and the Colts defense, especially when it comes to linebacker, which we'll talk about here in a second. But, you're flipping it over to this Falcons offense, which, like you said, there's been struggles this year, certainly. But this Falcons offense has so much talent. I mean, so many guys, Michael Penix, the quarterback, Bijan Robinson, the running back, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I mean, there's just guys everywhere for this Atlanta Falcons offense. But You throw it against the Colts defense, which certainly has had some up and down moments this year. But now you throw in the Sauce Gardner trade for the Indianapolis Colts. It's a very interesting matchup here that I think we could potentially see between Drake London and Sauce Gardner, two players that are young, and I think two players that are, right there at the prime of their careers. So what do you think it's going to look like here for this Falcons offense? And what do you think they need to do in order to potentially have success against this Indianapolis Colts defense?
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons, when they've been successful, they just go to their star players because they don't really have anything else to do. Like the scheme is not getting guys open. They're telegraphing a lot of their play designs with their motions, and this has been brought up multiple times to the coaching staff and their responses. The players just have to execute the plays better or not making any changes. So it looks really easy for defenses, especially against the run. They just kind of charge wherever the play is going, and they're always right about where they don't seem to ever be caught off guard. So maybe someday they'll make a change and actually get a big play out of it, because at this point, defenses seem to be just totally understanding of what Atlanta's doing offensively, and it's making things very difficult for their players. But at the end of the day, like, if you can take away Drake London, the Falcons don't have any other receivers right now. Darnell Mooney has not returned to last year's level. He missed all of training camp with a shoulder injury he suffered on the first day of camp. Then he came back and had a hamstring injury immediately and missed more time. So he's finally back playing, but he's only gotten a handful of targets a game. And the Falcons don't really target the middle of the field at all. They just have, they sort of target outside deep, or it's short stuff. And that's kind of it. And it's really disappointing considering Drake London's the dig king. That's Drake London's favorite route. They don't ever run it. So it's very frustrating. And they do have guys. We mentioned Darnell Mooney. He should be a bigger factor. Kyle Pitts has been the Falcons' sort of favorite relief valve for Michael Penix, but he could do so much more than just play relief valve. There's no intermediate routes in this offense. So Pitts isn't really taking advantage of any crossers or getting matched up on linebackers. It's really just what you see is what you get. It's a lot of deep out type sideline routes and short plays, slants to London. We've seen defenses sit on those because the Falcons run that play so much, as well as the quick outs. We've seen Michael Penix picked on 2 of those so far, where defenses just knew it was coming. And then they like to throw tight end screens to Kyle Pitts, which is one of the weirdest plays. I mean, yes, Pitts is good, but I wouldn't say his short area quickness is his best attribute. So they do love to just kind of throw the ball to Bijan Robinson, who he could just make miracles happen, but that's kind of the extent of the passing game. And now that the rushing attack has really struggled in recent weeks, they can't really move the ball on the ground. So it's become a one-dimensional pass-focused offense with one of the best running backs in the NFL, and they don't run play action. They run play action the least of any team in the NFL. So it's there's not a lot going for them. And I think the Colts have a great run defense, so it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of opportunities to move the ball on the ground. And now with Sauce Gardner in there, I mean, Drake London's been able to take down great corners. I mean, he just gave Christian Gonzalez everything he could handle in that game and had a great game. But if the Colts can find a way to take Drake London out of the matchups and focus on him, they don't really have anyone else. Their wide receiver 3 has basically been a ghost, and Darnell Mooney hasn't been able to perform as the 2. So it could be a tough time for Atlanta if they can't get the ball to Drake London and their other stars.
Yeah, you mentioned the offensive line and the struggles they've had just with the injuries and things like that. Now, this is the Colts defensive line that, coming in a little bit banged up with a couple guys, Ebukam and Taekwon Lewis potentially not going to play again for, I think, a 3rd consecutive week. But Leatu Latu coming off a really good game, 2.5 sacks, his best game of his career so far through his first 2 seasons. And then obviously, you have different guys as well, like DeForest Buckner, who everybody knows, and a few other guys potentially that could get some pressure. But it's going to be an interesting thing because I feel like, they're on paper, the Colts defensive line should be feasting. But again, you never know truly with how this is going to go. But how do you feel about this matchup potentially with the Falcons offensive line? And do you think there's a chance they can hold up and protect Michael Penix?
They've held up so far despite all the injuries. If both of their guards are out, it's going to be really bad. I don't think they can survive, basically 4 offensive linemen out of the lineup. I mean, I think that's going to be really rough. Notably, Penix has been the number 1 quarterback in pressure to sack ratio. He has avoided sacks at the best rate in the NFL, which is kind of crazy considering he doesn't scramble really. He just doesn't take a lot of sacks. So, whatever he's doing there, that's been great, but this could finally be where it's just too much to overcome. And while the Colts aren't necessarily one of the elite sacking teams of the NFL, it's a vulnerable interior with these 2 guards out, if that is the case. And Elijah Wilkinson at right tackle has been bolstered by Lindstrom, who's one of the best guards in the NFL. But if Lindstrom's no longer in there, that's a spot where you're sending everything you've got at their 4th tackle. And it's just unlikely to work too well. They haven't done a good job of picking up blitzes and navigating that. They've managed to survive it. They're one of the better pass protecting offensive lines despite the injuries, but it feels like this might just be too many pebbles rolling downhill, and then the avalanche could start at any moment.
Yeah, you never truly know how it's going to go out there because things on paper sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but we'll just have to see on that. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on, man. I guess I have one more thing. We always like to do this with anybody we bring on the show from opposing teams. I would love to get a score prediction from you for this game. If you have kind of a score prediction in mind, obviously the spread, like we said, is 6.5. Again, shout out to FanDuel. But yeah, what are your kind of thoughts here when it comes to that?
This feels like a 27-24 type of game to me. I think the Falcons cover, and get inside that 6.5 window. And they just brought in a new kicker, so it feels inevitable to me that there's going to be like a missed kick that could possibly like tie the game or something, because that's what happened last week. But yeah, the Falcons play up to their opponents. I mean, I think the Colts are clearly the better team at this stage. There's no question, but the Falcons really try their best against the better teams on their schedule. They caught the Bills sleeping as well. They almost took down the Patriots last weekend. So I expect they'll play a better game than expected because that just seems to be what they do. And then they'll promptly go out and like lose 30-0 to the Jets or something like that. But
Sure.
I think it's like a 27-24 situation where they cover. But yeah, they'll look good on national TV. They typically do. So we'll see just how close it is. But yeah, I think it's not a great matchup for the Falcons on paper either, given that the Colts' particular strengths. So
Sure. Awesome. Well, I'm going to probably go 24-20. I mean, I think it's going to be really close, like you said. Like, I think it's going to be a one-score game. I think both these teams, obviously coming off very disappointing losses, looking to potentially make a statement here in Germany. So we'll just have to see. But, Kevin, really appreciate you coming on, my friend. I wish the Colts played the Falcons more because I always enjoy our conversations a lot. But, yeah, man, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and find all your work?
Sure, guys. You can find me on Twitter at Falcoholic Kevin. The show is The Falcoholic Live and Dirty Birds and Brews, which are on YouTube, Spotify. If you're going on podcast platforms, it's under Dirty Birds and Brews. On YouTube, it's The Falcoholic. It's also where I do all my writing, falcoholic.com. So you can check that out. And yeah, we also have a preview with Cody coming out on our channel. So if you want to get the little bit more of the Falcons side of things over there, you can check us out as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, be sure to go check out all they do over there on the Falcoholic and everything Kevin's involved with. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and drop your score predictions in the chat below. But that'll do it for this one. Thanks so much. And as always, go Colts.